Welcome to the adventures of self. Conversations with ordinary and extraordinary people as they explore what it means to be self-expressed. Come on in. Join the adventure.
So, welcome, Pat Lynes, to the Adventures of Self.
Thank you. Great to be here, Taylor. Thanks for inviting me. Let's see how this flows, eh?
Yeah. So, Pat, you're in in your office, I guess, Sullivan and Stanley,
Yes.
which is an award-winning change agent consultancy.
Yeah, we do change and transformation for corporates that's stuck in the industrial world, trying to get into the new world.
Okay. So, first question is: so, what's the new world?
Well, the new world is Industry 4.0. So if we think about most organizations have a digital ambition, but most organizations are stuck in a organization structure that was fit for the industrial era, so the last century. Too big, too slow to move, having their lunch profits being eaten by fast startups and heavily funded mid caps that haven't got as much legacy as they have. So this kind of sweet spot I saw in the market was the majority of executives I was talking to at the time were fed up of dealing with some of the big consulting brands, and you know who they are. And I felt that there was an opportunity to develop a sort of next generation consulting firm to inspire a future work, because it's not just about the structure of organizations, it's about the talent that comes in and out of organizations, and having a background in recruitment and senior recruitment and helping organizations recruit talent to transform. Most organizations you go in and the staff are dead behind the eyes. They're just living for the weekends. They're just not happy. The organization not happy. They've probably been there too long. They're too scared to leave, and it's just legacy, as I call it. And I just wanted to create a consultant firm that could help inspire a future of work where people could enjoy working for organizations. And how do you transform into that when it is quite hard for corporates to do so because they're too big?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of people who listen might sort of be in that world of, I think you and I share some familiarity with having significant corporate backgrounds. And like you say, there are all these organizations, these very large corporate organizations, even some fairly medium-sized organizations, that they just kind of get stuck in the inertia of just kind of doing what they've always done. And it's kind of an easy thing to do. And as you say, like as an employee, I'll just do what I did last time or last year, and I'll just wait for my paycheck to come, for my weekend to come, for however many weeks of vacation to come. And there's not a lot of real consideration of or engagement in what it means to be creating work. And the reality is that not only do the corporations suffer, but almost all people working in those organizations suffer. And it really all you do is you're kind of just waiting for a paycheck and a weekend, and not feeling engaged, not feeling fulfilled with work, with your
Correct,
career.
Yeah, and I think it's that desire for a better deal in work and life being one is omnipresent across all demographics now. So everything from baby boomers right down to Gen Z. So we help organizations transform into better versions of themselves. It's predominantly business and digital transformation.
And is the first thing to acknowledge that there is a desire for fulfillment, for change, for I guess maybe it's in corporate industry lingo to, let's create profits, let's whatever, be at the forefront of your industry, but really that's about, because corporations are just an amalgamation of individuals, and the individuals have to be happy, the individuals have to be satisfied, have to be fulfilled, have to be challenged, have to be involved in a project, in the company itself.
Yeah, agreed. I wish I could remember one of the earlier descriptions of what a company actually is and what it exists to do. But it's maybe we could find it for the show notes. But in essence, it's been around good company, doing great things and breaking bread together. And I really subscribe to that. That's why I set this business up, where for me, the journey is important as the outcome. Yes, you want a business that's profitable. Yes, you want a business that can leave a legacy. But you've got to be purpose first, and you actually have a duty to look after, the people that, construct the energy in an organization. And you see some of the earlier thought leaders, like Branson always said, first things first, look after your people. If you look after your people, they'll look after your customers. And 40 years later, people are actually starting to get that the pennies dropped. He nailed that in the 80s, and on the whole has been super successful. So life's too short, I think, to be sat in a job that you're not fulfilled in. And that's how I got into creating. Actually, I had a great journey for 6-7 years, building a business from scratch for another entrepreneur. Got to somewhere where I thought I always wanted to be, big equity position, board member, great salary. I'd worked my arse off for arguably ever since I left university, 15 years to get to that spot, but 7 years in that business. And I've never been more unhappier in my life. And that's why I was looking for something different. Saw a random Facebook ad from Ryan and went to one of those events. And so he started off with, your focus determines your reality. And I thought, that's me, because I've always been a very focused individual. And when I focus on something, I always manifest it. And I just thought, even though some of it didn't work for me, I thought there was enough in that statement for me to explore it further. And that's how I got into, natural success and creating and all of those kind of good things. Because I was looking for a better deal with my life, and I wanted to get out of my own way, because I was in my own way. So yeah.
And just on that, because I can relate to that as well. I had a few careers in law and renewable energy and consulting, and I also reached a point where whatever I was doing, the company I was working for, the organizations, they were fine organizations, and we were doing interesting things, but I wasn't satisfied with myself. And I came to a point in myself, I think as much what I was doing outside of work, or that I wasn't actually creating in my job, that led me to want something else. And as you say, you're a successful guy, obviously doing quite well in career, but there's something inside that feels unfulfilled, unacknowledged, unrecognized, and we go searching for that. And what's interesting is that like if you look back a generation, it was kind of all fulfilled by the organization, by the corporation, by the societal structure, and those structures are breaking down, so that people not only it doesn't work from the top down. So the organizations, the Virgins and maybe a few others were ahead in doing some of that, so they didn't really work from the top down, but also people weren't really feeling that fulfillment. So we're going out for other things.
Yeah, agreed. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And it's also not necessarily, because I think I've talked to some friends of mine in corporate who, when I say, I do some personal development, I work as a intuitive coach, and I've got a couple of friends that say to me, they say, that's probably really good for people that are really unhappy or don't know what they want in life. Or it's kind of this assumption, it's like, wow, you must be really, really screwed up to go to personal development or to feel like you need that in life. And maybe you do, maybe I was, but I also think it's as much about just expanding what your sense of fulfillment and possibility is. And as you say, like, you may be very, very good at what you do, but you're also recognizing that you get in your own way on a number of things.
Yeah, I think it's it's good now that coaching isn't a taboo word. Actually, I think when I'm the product of coaching, 100%. I wouldn't be here today if I didn't. 42 now, probably about 28, with a similar thing. I climbed to the top of the sales leaderboard in a global business, and it's been paid good money. And I was just like, what am I going to do? Like, I wasn't fulfilled, and I knew I had a different calling. But when you're 28 and earning good money, you kind of think most of my mates would give their right arm to be on a 6-figure salary, but it's not. I realized then it wasn't about money for me, and I seeked out a coach, and they helped me make the right decision. And then I thought, right, I'm going to use a coach now for forevermore. So I'm wholeheartedly believe in coaching and recommend it to anyone that are my friends or that I meet, and obviously people that work for me here as well. Everyone has access to coaches here. I made that decision at 28 that I would never stop trying to grow myself and trying to improve and have that learning mentality, and not have an unhealthy ego where I have to be right all the time or anything, because as we know, with creating, most of the time we get in our own way, don't we? Sometimes you just need those conversations, someone like you or someone like William or somewhere else, where they just can turn around and say, mate, just stick your head out your ass. Stop giving yourself a hard time, because we've all got different personalities and we all have our own crosses to bear, don't we? And it's sometimes you just need that cut through, don't you? I'm just telling you to have a word of yourself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. Like there's this kind of stigma out of coaching. Like I think maybe there was a time sort of 5-10 years ago when coaching was kind of seen as another word for therapy, and that's kind of why it's like, oh, you must really have problems, and you just don't want to go see a therapist, so you're paying for a coach. And it's like life coach. It's like, oh, to tell you how to run your life. Where I think in our experience, right, it's not how to run your life, it's how to be more effective at what it is you want, and helping you identify really what it is you want. One of the things I learned, not from Natural Success, but from another sort of work I was doing, which I think is very, very useful, is you cannot see your own blind spots.
Yeah, so true.
And that really goes to kind of what one of the things that coaching can be about. And like I do see more and more like William always says, it's like you can't afford not to have a coach, right? Like if you want, however you define success, whether that's running a multi-million-dollar business, whether that's running a family, whether that's being an artist, or living in a shack and having a whatever life you want, right? That the something because we're social creatures, and somebody who can provide that reflection back is really beneficial. And I think like when you look at like it's top executives, and it's top every top sports athlete has a coach or a manager or whatever, right? They wouldn't dream of not having one.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, the way I like to articulate it, and the way I articulate it to people here when I suggest they should have a coach, is you're the CEO of your own life, right? You're the founder of your own life. You are in charge of your own life. So every successful business has a board. If you want to be successful in your own life, you should have your own board around your own mind. Like and I always articulate that way. Got a coach for X, a coach for Y. My dad, thankfully he's still there and fighting fit at 72, which is fab. And you have all these people that influence you, and you just try and think of yourselves like you're the CEO of your own life, and you need people around you to guide you to have a better life. And I always find, and maybe you found this as well, like I've still got friends now, and I find it difficult to spend time with some of them, because especially when you do this coaching, you kind of think, man, you are manifesting all of that. Like, how are you doing? Oh, well, life just happens to me, doesn't it? And you're like, well, no, it doesn't. Like it doesn't, and there's only so much after 15 years of trying to help people out when they just don't want to listen, and they'd never have a coach because they'd see that as a failure. And obviously I'll never stop because they're still mates, and you try, but wholeheartedly believe in coaching.
Yeah. And not to say it's interesting because we were talking like before the show, because I think it's useful. Like we can kind of say like, okay, rah rah rah, go get a coach, and everything will be great, and your life's going to be amazing, and certainly can, because I think what we're saying is it gives you as much the awareness as you say. It's like, well, you're the founder, you're the CEO, you're the creator. You get to choose and decide what it is you want your life to be. Now, some people think it's like, oh, well, that's just kind of wishful thinking. You don't just sort of like, wave a magic wand and everything happens, or it doesn't. And I can think like, well, I don't know if it does or it doesn't, but if I take the assumption and attitude that what I'm going to do with my life, where I'm going to live, what food I'm going to eat, what I'm going to do for exercise, the relationships I'm going to have with my family, my friends, intimate partner, or whomever, what I do for career, all of this, like at every level, as you say, it's like we're always creating. And yes, there's a big world out there, and yes, there's 8 billion people, and whether that determines what you're capable of or not, I don't know, but the assumption that you choose, and regardless of what happens, that you're being self-determined is for me is like now the most fulfilling thing. I make far less than I used to as a corporate lawyer, and yet I'm infinitely more fulfilled because of the things that I'm creating, and also seeing opportunities, potentials as they continue to come up.
Yeah, it's you got to follow through on the advice as well, haven't you? Like if you're getting coaching, not, you can pick and choose your advice, can't you? And but yeah, you've got to follow through in it. But I mean that, yeah, it's similar to here. I mean, yeah, I run a business and stuff, and that's great. But I'm on a fraction of what I was on when I was in. It wasn't a corporate world, but that's my own decision. And obviously, I'm investing into an asset, and yes, it is building, but yeah, it's my shit. This is kind of, and I can choose, and I can, who I work with, what I want to do, how I'm doing it. And this could be a lot bigger if I wanted it to be, but I also don't want to stress myself out and, not experience my 2 children grow up as well. So yeah, it's nice to have as much as a fulfilled life as you can whilst incorporating your own personality into the mix.
Yeah, and I think there is this thing about taking advice and following through, but certainly in the work we do, I can't speak for other coaching modalities or practices, but in intuitive coaching, it's as much about learning to really learning to be your own coach. It's so the follow through comes from you. It's not somebody saying, well, go do XYZ. It's me saying, ooh, I think I should go do XYZ, and somebody saying, yeah, you should go do XYZ, or whatever it is, right? That ultimately it's about empowering oneself. Now there's a sort of a support, a buffer, maybe an accountability, or some other structure that sits there. But it's as much about learning how to be the creator of your thing. So you decide, well, yeah, I could take it to a 5,000 person company, but God, that's not what I want. And maybe I could make 10 million doing that, but it's like, yeah, but I want, as you say, you want to see your kids grow up. You want to be part of a very different thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's and that's the bit I like about this coaching is, I've always been quite intuitive. Again, it just worked for me, continues to work for me. Still an avid student, still work with William, had a great few years with Thea as well, and still learning loads and still trying to get out of my own way. But it's it's just, they always say, don't you, your gut and your intuition, it's 90% right most of the time, isn't it? And you've just got to follow your nose. As my dad says, like, follow your nose. That's it's a good way of looking at it. And knowing, and it's not sometimes that it might not, if you think of the context of growing this business, it might, like the last year, it was right for me because of the pandemic to take a step back and do a lot of changes with it. Where I think a lot of people are like, why are you meddling with this? Why are you doing this? Why have you got rid of certain people? Why, no, look, it was hard. It was one of the hardest year I've ever been But again, it was right for me to take that step back and just slow it down a bit and rebuild it into a better version of itself, whilst also figuring out what I wanted to get out the next 3 years as well. And all of that was intuitive work, as well as, I have a coach, a business coach. So I've got William helps. I'm in Razor's Edge with you. And that just helped me through this, again, it's following your nose, isn't it? Just what's right to do. And most of the time it doesn't feel right. Oh no, that's wrong. It feels right, but logically it might feel wrong.
Yeah.
So your gut says it's right for you to do this, but logically in your brain's going, but why would you do that? I mean, if you stayed with this model, you'd be 4 times the size, you'd have more EBITDA and all the usual metrics people talk about businesses, you'd have blah, 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 and you wouldn't feel like, you're taking a step back. But sometimes you just got to follow with what your nose is saying is the right thing to do.
Yeah, and that is a practice, that is a learning, and also a stumbling, right? I mean, one of the things we talked about, because what I want to get to is, it can sort of feel, maybe for listeners or anybody, that like, oh well, these, it's kind of like they've kind of learned how to bulletproof their life, and I could never be like that. But the reality is, of course, that we stumble all the time. We still do get it in our own way. We still do say, okay, I see what my gut says, but I'm just going to go with what logic tells me, and then we pay the price for it. But we see it,
and we'll continue to do that. I mean, I had it with. There was a certain situation over the last year, and I won't go into details, be unfair on that person, but I just knew it was wrong. And I remember tuning into my spirit guide, and that's weird as well. We should talk about those. But always right. How annoying. But I do enjoy them. But yeah, it was just basically, the best thing to serve you here would be to make a tough decision. And I ignored it for a year. And then the decision came to a head, You still ignore it when you get a strong hit, because it doesn't suit you at the time, or it's too hard at the time. And there's it's just, it's not easy, is it?
No, and I can relate. I had that happen also twice. I was renovating my apartment, and there were 2 times when my spirit guide told me to make a very hard decision about people, and I ignored it, and I paid the price. Certainly financially, emotionally, and I don't know, maybe other ways as well. And there's a sense, it's like, well, I don't want to make the hard decision now because I want to gamble on it becoming easier later. And often what happens is it just becomes harder and worse later.
No, you put it beautifully there. I mean, it does, doesn't it? Always, you're getting a strong hit for a reason, because, your spirit guide's trying to look out for you. And as you say, it always gets harder. And, the problem just amplifies.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get into spirit guide, since you said since you opened it up, because I'm sure people will listen to me like, what is that? Some seance, or you've got some ancestor that you pray to or something, so we've learned a particular. I mean, there's a lot of tools and techniques that one can use for. We'd say tuning into your intuition. The thing about intuition is really interesting, because I love when you break it down, that it is your tuition, like your knowledge, your knowing, right? The schooling that we get, and it's inner. It's our inner knowing. That's really what intuition is. And there's many ways that we've learned and practiced to connect with that. And so spirit guide is one of those. So what does that mean for you?
Oh God, it's where do I start with that? Okay, so I'm assuming your audience can be anyone who, so they might not, they might not be in naturally. Okay,
not at all.
So I think a lot. If I look at if we park spirit guide over there for a second, as I said, I've always been an intuitive soul. I've always, followed my intuition in a roundabout way. So I think if you look at, and everyone who'd be listening to this will have an example of where they've got a gut feel or a gut call, and they've gone with it, and it's paid off handsomely. So whether for me it was, went to university, saw my now wife, and went, she's the one for me. And then chased her for 9 months, lost on my personality, couldn't even talk to her. God knows why she chose me, still punching above my weight. And, but there we go, right? I'm still very happily together 20 odd years later with 2 boys, right through to, I had in a business perspective, a call to reach out to someone I didn't know. Because he was a social influencer, and it was just like, he's in the shower, reach out to this guy, he'll give you the next step, reach out to this guy, blah, blah. Did, and then my new business exploded on the back of some of his advice. And down to when I used to be a DJ, I was sat at university, and mine just said, pack your bags, go and stay with your mate in Brighton. Okay. And I did. I remember people looking at me going, why are you packing your bags and going to Brighton? I don't know, I'm just going to go to Brighton, stay with my mate Leafy. 4 weeks later, I met a guy called Graham, and we set up this, website and became DJs, and everything that I was in my mind saying, and I just before I even got into it, I want to be a DJ. Every time I was DJing in the kitchen, I'm going to be a DJ, and in my mind I was impressing it to my subconscious mind. And then my intuition said, go to Brighton. Went to Brighton, met this guy, and then, next 5-6 years was amazing. So how do you develop intuition? How do you harness that as a powerful ally to guide you in your life? Obviously, the Natural Success coaching has really helped bring it out. And when I first heard about spirit guides, I just laughed at myself. I'm not doing one of those. No way. And I remember in some of the earlier ones with William, watching him doing them live, thinking, I'm not going to stand up. There's no fucking way I'm doing this. And then I remember doing it for the first time and bursting out laughing. And I couldn't finish it. And then I thought, don't be silly. And I went through a guided meditation, and then I started writing and, tapping away. I've got this like app on my phone where I look at my choices, and I'll constantly clear out the notes and put notes back in. And then over time, when you start doing it over and over and over and over again, you realize actually the integrity is very sound on it. And you can only look at that and have that balanced view over a multi-year period. So do I do spirit guides all the time? No. Do I do at least one a month? Yes. When I'm on holiday, I do loads, so I do use them when I want to get, a guide on, where life's going, what's the right thing to do, on my choices in life. I think to strip away some of that jargon, it's basically meditating, getting yourself into a relaxed state where you're reducing the chatter in your mind, and then asking yourself, what's true for me to do this year? Do I stay in this city, or do I go to another city? I've got an issue with X. What do you think? I mean, the possibilities are endless. And I find when you do, so people are meditating a bit more now. And when you meditate and you reduce the chatter, you do get hits, you get directions. Like, we live in a world where the digital noise and the noise is so loud that I think people probably miss some of the most strongest weapon that you have in your armory, which is your gut and your intuition. So I think spirit guides is getting into a meditative state and then asking yourself some questions and then writing down what you're telling yourself. And in there's always gold. Always gold.
It's really it's really profound and helpful what you say. And very true. It's very true story that you speak about, which is it's like on some level, I think, and most people know that they know. They know that they know what's the right thing to do, but often there's so much noise. There's what my partner says, there's what this commercial says, there's what my mother told me when I was 6, and all this stuff that comes up, and we don't really allow ourselves to settle, as you say, settle that noise down. And I think I've talked about this a few times on the podcast around meditation, that there's a kind of misconception that meditation is just about sort of emptying your mind and just being completely, I don't know, like empty, right? And holding that for whether it's 10 minutes or an hour or whatever it is. And then people get frustrated because thoughts come in and, what's this about? And there's different types of meditation, but this is, as you talk about, like we learn it, but we practice it. And it's not that, William talks about this, we don't have a society where we have been raised to connect with intuition, or to believe, or to assume, to trust, or to see intuition as a valid guiding principle for ourselves. And it's interesting, like here we are, two corporate guys. You're stayed much more corporate than I have, but and to talk about sort of intuition and spirit guides probably seems, on one hand, there's part of me that feels like, oh, this is a bit silly, because you say, well, even in the beginning, you were kind of laughing, well, this is ridiculous. But once you put the wording aside, once you sort of put that aside and say, okay, well, maybe it is silly, but I'm just gonna give this a go. I'm gonna be in it. And it's not necessarily you do it one and done. So you do something and then you've solved your life. It's the consistency of doing something that gives you guidance, whether you, and it's like you either choose to follow that guidance or not. And as we described earlier, the times when you get guidance, you hear it and you say, nope, I'm not going to do that. And bad or challenging or difficult things come about. And you say, okay, well, I had guidance that told me to do X and I chose not to. And this is what happened. So then the next time when you get guidance, you say, okay, I don't know where this is coming from. I don't know why it's here. I don't know what a spirit guide is. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm getting this guidance. Okay, I'm going to follow it this time. And then magical things happen. You say, oh, okay, well, that's reinforced what this practice is.
Yeah.
And it's a learning that's very real, visceral, that it's real time. It's not some sort of planned thing out. It's
yeah I mean the more you do it, the more succinct the guidance gets as well. I always, again, if we keep it simple, you put yourself, you meditate. I listen to, I do spirit guides, or I'll listen to a meditative 15 minutes of just some, quiet music or something. And then you ask yourself a number of questions, and then just always just start writing and then just go. You can't question it. Or I just, some of the best ones I'm literally transfixed. I did it on holiday once. My wife's just started getting into natural success coaching, and we were in holiday, and I was I had my headphones on. I was listening to Spirit Guide, and I was just like, put on the phone. So what are you doing? I was like, I've just done a Spirit Guide. She's like, let me have a look. You got all of that? And I was like, yeah, I got all of that. She was like, bloody hell, and hers was like 2 paragraphs, because she started to overthink it, so she'd start writing and go, well, that's not me, or I couldn't possibly allow myself to think that, or no, I'm not, and then bang, it stops. The best thing is just, even if it sounds preposterously silly, just finish it off until you decide there's nothing left. And then I always enjoy reading them back afterwards and thinking, that's there's a lot of integrity there. And then also you get the curveballs. You think, really? Maybe that's a few years down the line, and then sometimes they happen sooner than you think, out of nowhere. And I don't know, it's strange. But and the other thing as well is, some people struggle with meditation. I do, like sometimes I'm into it, sometimes I'm not. I'm not perfect on it in any way, shape or form. But the other way to look at it as well is just trying to, and I do this sometimes when I'm falling out of love with meditation, is just get up early in the morning, especially in the winter, go make that coffee, sit downstairs, no phone, and just sit in silence for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Don't overcomplicate, just sit in silence, and then your brain will start talking to you.
Yeah.
and you'll get guidance that way, like, and if you're busy at work, if you're chewing on a problem, or you're not happy with your life and you're looking for that what's next for me, like loads I've gone through it a couple of times, and I'm sure people listening to this will be like, not really happy with my lot, and this is what I really want to do, but I'm shit scared that I won't be able to do that, or I don't really know what to do next. And we'll constantly search on Facebook for the next bit of guidance, or Twitter, or their mates, and blah. Sometimes just what to do. You just got to take a bit of a step back and cut out the noise in your life and listen to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to sort of maybe bring it back a little bit to how this plays out for you, not only in the organization that you run, but in how you work with people. Because when I sort of look at what Sullivan and Stanley does, and creating change from within, creating better environments, working environments, it has a lot of, to me, from my eye, it looks like it's a lot of creating, it's a lot of bringing a lot of this idea of transformation, right, which is going beyond where you are. And I think that you and I would agree that whether it's incremental or quite monumental, we are creating today differently from yesterday. And so that is constant transformation, constant change, constant becoming, and spirit guidance and other intuitive work can give you insight into where it is you choose to go or want to go with that. But then, as you say, you got to follow through with that. And we started talking about how the sort of traditional legacy big corporate organizations kind of get stuck in this, well, we've done this, always done this, we're just going to keep doing it like this, and this is our profit margin, and this is our sales targets, and and you're really bringing in a revolutionary concept to really bring transformation into organizations. I suppose from top down or bottom up. You can tell me more, or maybe it's both, or everything. But it's the concept of changing from within.
Yes, yeah. Which is, it's my strong view and our strong premise that that's one of the only ways to do it, really. And look, I think if you take a step back, traditionally the big companies, it's difficult, right? And we have to, recognize that a lot of executives are under a lot of pressure. So the average tenure of a CEO, our CFO, I won't name them all, but the C-suite, is at an all-time low. It's like 18 months, 2 years, because they'll come in, turn around, launch another change program, bring in a big four, because you don't get fired for hiring the big four. The big four comes in with a pyramid model, sells you a cookie cutter approach to a linear change process, which basically fills their coffers for a pyramid model. The internal workforce doesn't trust them because they've seen it all before. Then you get the frozen middle, the inertia from within, when they turn and go, he'll be gone or she'll be gone in a year. Hold the line, guys. It was KPMG last year. Now it's IBM. And like, it doesn't work. Doesn't work. So my old life was recruiting change agents in to solve this. And I had this idea with, well, what happens if I flipped it on its head, and instead of protecting my black book and having like, you buy my black book, that's disintermediate now in a decentralized internet world. You can find people on LinkedIn. You can, there's networks everywhere. So I thought, I've got to probably disintermediate myself to then try and build a different model that might be the future of consulting. So in short, it came from inviting 500 change agents that I've used for years in any of the gigs. And what I love about it is it taps into this premise of, maybe I don't want to be the permanent transformation director, the permanent C-suite. I've had enough. I've done it for 20 years, and you'll resonate with this yourself. Maybe I want to go interim. Maybe I want to be an expert. So this whole idea came around harnessing the power of the expert crowd, creating a community consulting force that could deploy in as a SWAT team to help organizations deliver successful change. So when you talk about change from within, firstly, the white space that we want to occupy, we call it client side. So we've got to be trusted. We've got to work with the permanent workforce, upskill them, knowledge transfer, co-execute. And then you get this viral change from within, where you show them what to do. You know, they do it. You train them. You upskill them. You exit. So, you know, I don't think an example. I don't know if I'll be able to share the video. So it's probably noise to share the video, but when I talk about inspiring the future of work and talk about some of the stuff I said at the start, a big energy organization, energy trading organization, brought us in to help them transform to be a customer first business. They were getting so far away from the customer that they were bottom of the rankings in the UK index. So much so that the main co was going to cut them loose. Everyone was going to lose their jobs, all this kind of stuff, right? So we went in, we came up with this new way of building an operating model to deliver closer to the customer, become more digital, get value quicker out to the customer. So hallmarks of digital first, agility, transformation, etc. Built them into squads, got them around customer journeys, led, co-created, co-executed. A year later, they're leading, we've stood back, we've started to exit out, and we've got a series of videos where they're just lit up. They're enjoying their work again. You know, it's fluid, it's purposeful. They're getting stuff done. They don't have the corporate bloat and bureaucracy stopping them, and the executive. I mean, there's still a little bit of it, but it's better. And because it's changing from within. It's not changing from a big badge that's gone, here's a 500-page slide deck. Oh, and by the way, it's going to cost you 40 million to execute it. Oh, right, we'll just get 100 contractors. Who's going to orchestrate those? And then they've got different, you know, so there's that whole orchestration piece as well. And, you know, I think, and that's what we get a real kick off in. That's what I get a real kick off. Because in essence, I'm a connector and opportunity maker. That's what I love doing. So I'm still connecting people to opportunities, and, you know, we're still creating opportunities, and I like making markets and all that kind of stuff. But what I really love is when you're doing something really cool and everyone is very energized about it all, and we are inspiring a future work. And you know, just recently their NPS scores have gone through the roof, and you know, it's a recovering business that's now starting to thrive, and that's where we want to play. And don't get me wrong, we've had other clients where the executive theatre is too much. Then they're never going to change, and you know, life's too short for that as well.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, something like that, well, actually, what I wanted to get to was, as you say, the change comes from within. And what I always noticed, I mean, I've worked for consultancy. We weren't sort of that change kind of management consultancy. We were consultancy for renewable energy projects. But I was very familiar, you know, like you get caught in that, well, we did this report for XYZ Corp, will do it for ABC org, and let's just, you know, cut and paste all the stuff and make some changes, right? And it always felt really like we weren't really making change. I mean, we did the best we could, and the thing I noticed, particularly when I got into, you know, this kind of intuitive coaching work, is to realize that, like, when I go into organizations, I see that they've already got 90% of the information, the talent, the ability, the resource within. It's just not very well organized, right? Because it's got some legacy thing where it's like, well, this is what the marketing team does. This is what the sales team does. They don't talk to each other because of, for whatever reason, because the bosses that used to be here 6 years ago didn't like each other, and they fought for turf over, you know, whatever budget there was. And yeah, often it's, you know, it goes back to sort of the idea around coaching, right? So somebody outside can see the blind spots and can see what's working and what's not. Not to say, well, here's a 500 slide deck, and you got to, you know, do all this absolute, like, turn the whole apple cart upside down. That often the idea is, well, how do you empower people within the organization to be involved? You know, the synergy work that we do in natural success training always seems like the you know, like the best way for organizations to work. Like, if the vast majority of people are involved in decision making at whatever level. I mean, I understand there's challenges. It's not about just everybody doing things, but if you're involved in decision making, involved in outcomes, then you're going to be engaged in actually creating those.
Correct. Yeah. Co-creation. That's the future. People have to have equity in the change, otherwise
Mm-hmm.
and it needs to be inspiring, and they need to have something to gain from it. Otherwise, as we've all seen, the frozen middle sabotages it.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that a lot now. I think hierarchies now, again, I talked about the industrial era. This is like, CEO down hierarchies and bloat. And it's just, the pandemic just showed that, you don't need to have loads of people man-marking people. And the new generation won't stand for it. And the older generation want to become, gigsters and have portfolio arrangements with their life. So it's going to be an interesting time in the corporate world. Interesting time.
Yeah, I mean, and you wrote a book on this kind of, be interested to hear, because you talked about crowdsourcing, the gig economy, and you've got this concept which I think you spoke about for this sort of SWAT team, is this teams as service. So how does that all kind of fit in terms of transforming? I mean, where do you see things going in the next several years or decades or whatever it is?
Oh, that's a big question. So I do believe small is the new large. So, Marshall Goldsmith says a great quote: "What gets you here won't get you there." So we have this premise that, a small team of highly powered change agents, and executors can probably do more good for a business than an army of consultants. I think we also live in a world where, this on-demand services into instant gratification, and people want it quicker, they want it more efficient, and they want to get more cut through, and we're getting that across everywhere, from Amazon right through to getting a slot at your favorite restaurant via an app, so you don't have to queue, whatever, right? It's just everything is just a little bit easier. So I think people's expectations in the business world is a bit more that way. So where do I see it going? I think the corporate world will become more decentralized. I think it will become, if you think of work, if we just localize it in work, I'd like to see a world where organizations just change from their mindset of, we have to own our talent, we have to own it, it's ours, and flip it to access to talent or hosting our talent. So I've seen it for 20 years, this kind of, we have to do these long permanent drives to bring people in, and then we bring them in, and then we can't host them, and then they leave, and then we go around in this little circle, and it's just doesn't work. Actually, access to talent, right? If we go from more time and activity based working to more project and transformational outcome based working, and some organizations do this, by the way, there's some great organizations that do this, where people are constantly moving around from project to project. So they're growing as individuals. If we look at some of these Scandinavian businesses that, like Handelsbanken, outperforming every bank bar none for the last 40 years, they don't have a bonus structure. The CEO, anyone can call him. He's got his mobile published on the intranet. People come first, people over profit, and by the way, they're extremely profitable. They're purpose led. So, where do I see it going in the next five to 10 years? I think the larger corporates will need to become a bit more decentralized. I think they're going to have to, I think the brand will be replaced by the face. So faces, people will be faces of organizations, more project outcome based. If you're not purpose led, you're going to die. I have a big, strong premise of that. I think there's some fantastic examples out there of organizations that are purpose over profit. And, you just have to look at their retention rates, how they organize, how they execute, as well as a healthy P&L. There's lots of consistencies in these businesses, like the C-suite have been there for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. They've bedded in, they've gone long-term rather than short-term. I don't know. I just think a new world order is poking through. The stock market will be replaced by crypto. Things will be on the blockchain. I think we could be looking at certain stateless society. I mean, you know, where governments are going to compete for you rather than they got to serve you rather than you serve them. I think, you know, libertarianism is going to go through the roof as the years tick by. I could go on, mate, what I think is going to happen this 10 years. I mean, I'd love to. That's another podcast in its own right. But I think the pandemic has made everyone realize that you don't have to stay in your country. You can get a few passports. You can be a digital nomad. You can, you know, there's just, it's made everyone think. Like, it's made me think, like, I don't have to commute here every day for 5 days a week. My wife and I want to live by the sea. Let's go and live by the sea, you know. And I just, I think from a business perspective, more outcome based, more purpose based. I think macro wide, I think we're going to have quite a tumultuous 10 years personally. But I think at the end of it, we'll be in a great society. And I think a lot of the change that has to come through will start to come through. What a time to be alive as well, eh? Lots of opportunity will come out of all of that as long as you keep positive and look for the trends.
Thanks. There's a lot. I don't necessarily want to unpack it all. As you say, we can
sorry.
No.
You did ask.
No, I love it. I really love it, Pat, because it's very in line, and I think it creates so many questions and opportunities, and like, oh, that's interesting and I'd like to get into all of it. But I think the thing like that really comes through, it goes back to purpose and transformation. So, I love what you say, and I about being purpose-led. So organizations become purpose-led, but I think it goes back to what we were talking about, sort of in the middle here, where we're talking about you and me and our own journeys. Is that we become purpose-led. The system that we grew up in, the capitalist system or structure that we grew up in, has kind of reached its sell-by date. Like it's from the middle, from the bottom, from the top. I think a lot of people are saying, well, we're going to hold on to it because I've still got something invested into it. I've got my mortgage, I've got my company, I want to get my quarterly profits, I want to make X, Y, Z, whatever. But I think deep inside, it goes back to what we said, like intuition. It's like, well, how long do you keep with that? Because the vast majority of people, if you sit with it and you ask, is this overall structural system working? Most people would say no.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, look, if I was going to surmise all of it, business, macro, individual, what you and I have been doing, I suppose, for a number of years, we wanted to reclaim back our sovereignty, right? And I think that's what we're going to see this decade, is people are going to be reclaiming back their power, reclaiming back their sovereignty. And it will show out in people saying, look, I don't want one job for life. I want to have a portfolio of opportunities. I want to have this side hustle. We've got a lady who, she's fab, by the way. She's helping this business scale. And, she's a servant leader. She's a published author. She consults to big companies like Diageo. She runs a micro pub at the weekends. And it's just brilliant, right? She has this community in Northumberland. They come in and she makes a bit of money out of it, but she serves a community. So she, I reckon people are now going to start thinking, I want portfolio interests. I want my power back. And that's not to say they won't work for a corporate, but maybe those corporates will encourage stuff like that, because then their staff will be refreshed and they will feel they have their outlets, and then maybe they'll bring extra thinking back into organizations, and people's engagement will rise because they can work from home a bit more. They can have some side hustles. They're encouraged to learn and get a coach. And yes, they'll invest in your business wholeheartedly because you support them on that journey too.
I think that there, as you say, there are a number of organizations that are already doing this, but I think they're at the forefront. They're at the cutting edge. The early adopters and whatever the next sort of tranche. I think we're kind of past that. We're into past the 6% into the sort of the next percent that become that actually will eventually flip it, right? I mean, critical mass usually only takes around sort of 20 to 25% for things to become the norm. There's, because I think people are, like 5 years ago, when people looked at sort of nomad life and kind of digital this and gig economy, a lot of people like our generation or even younger, but we're like, oh, that's just being selfish. That's ridiculous. And it's outlandish and it doesn't work. That's just wishful thinking. And now it's like, yeah, but if people are individually and from an organization being purpose-led, and so, yes, somebody wants to make a living and do well, but also, if my heart really calls for me to create a micropub for a community, and that's going to make me happier, and that's going to make me a better mother or partner or worker from 9 to 5 on Monday or whatever it is, then that's the thing to do and follow, right? And I think what I really appreciate about I was talking to a friend of mine about this over the weekend. I'm sort of Gen X, and the millennials kind of get poo-pooed of like, oh, we're just kind of quite superficial and just go from thing to thing to thing, but they're very true, right? It's like, but there's a sort of following one's heart. That's not sort of like, well, somebody told me, my parents or my school told me that this is the path to follow, because many people did that, and that structure is definitely breaking down, and as you say, a new structure is being born, and over the next, I would also say the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be pretty tumultuous. But that's what transformation is. You go through. You've got to die to your current form to become what you're going to be.
Yeah. And it's happening so quickly. I mean, California, right? Look at that. Everyone wanted to be in California. Now no one wants to be in California. They want to be in Miami. Look at what's happening in Miami. You've got a mayor who's just everywhere, bringing everyone in. He's sitting there with his jacket and his jumbo lights going, come into Miami. He's put Bitcoin on the balance sheet, it's just, and that's happened very quickly, actually, because of the pandemic. I think a lot of people are sitting there with their states or their governments going, hang about, if you can lock me down in like 2 seconds, maybe there's a better deal elsewhere.
Well, it's very interesting from the American perspective. I mean, I understand it well, that because you basically have 50 sovereign states, as you say, competing. Well, we'll give you a better tax break. We'll give you a better lifestyle. We'll give you better this, that, the other, and and people are open to that, obviously.
And that's where I think it's going to go this decade. I think countries are going to be competing the best entrepreneurs, the best talent, and it'd just be interesting to see. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to there's the Chinese proverb and curse, right? Which is, wait, may you live in interesting times. And here we are in very interesting times. Cool. Well, this has been quite a ramble and a fun ride.
Is this how it usually goes on your podcast? Just go for it and see what happens.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I mean, it's an intuitive process for me. I get into, like as we talked about at the beginning, right? I like to tune in with the guests. I use intuition to help give a structure, a focus for what it is that we choose, because this is a co-creation, right? Otherwise it would be just me talking to the camera, which maybe interesting, but I like to have to collaborate and to co-create discussions, environments, I let it go where it's going to go, but also focus in where I think what I think is important. Maybe it's just from my point of view, but for what I think that is gonna help the overall arc of the show.
Cool. Well, hopefully I've been a cool guest for you. I've certainly enjoyed it. Thanks for inviting me.
You've been a great guest, Pat, and I really thank you for coming on. And it's linked to the company, to the book, and to other information about you in the show notes. So yeah, thanks, and let's see what we individually and collaboratively and universally create over the next months and years to come.
Absolutely. Thanks, Taylor. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Pat.